How's it going? And welcome to Test That Tech. Today we are going to be doing a teardown of the Nintendo Switch Enhanced Wireless Controller. The first thing you need to do is make sure it doesn't have batteries in it. In order to get this controller open, you are going to have to remove 8 screws here, 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 and here. So what these have in it is just these small Phillips head screws. After all those screws are out, we can just pull it apart like that. So on the back here, there are 3 screws holding the motherboard onto the controller. Once those screws are out, you can just lift this out of its housing. So these buttons that are on the controller at this point can actually come out. In order to get this back in the right way, it has this little notch here that this part goes into. So that way you know that the arrows are in the right direction. So with these letters, I would recommend, if you are going to take them out, put them back in the way they were. Otherwise your button layout will be all messed up. And this is the motherboard for the controller. These buttons are the back buttons. And the triggers are connected to these plastics, and these are held together with this plastic piece that it appears you would have to break off to get these out if you were to replace them. Then on the front, you have your analog sticks. So underneath this is not an actual button. What this is that this rubber part has a small black piece of plastic that lays over the sensor on the motherboard, and when you push the button, it hits that sensor so that the controller can register that a button is being pushed. And the piece of rubber is held in place by these little notches that go into these small holes on the motherboard. In order to get the motherboard off of this top plastic piece, it has 2 screws here and here that need to come off. So now that we've got those 2 screws off, we can just lift this out like that. You can get a little better view of the triggers and bumpers. As you can see, when I pull this, it moves the trigger in and out, but it's still soldered onto that piece of the motherboard that will not come out of this housing unless I were to break some of the plastic off, which I don't want to do. This is, again, the back of the motherboard. You can see that this wiring here is soldered on, so if I wanted to completely remove this piece of plastic, I would have to heat up the solder to melt it and then pull it off, and I would also have to solder it back on. So I'm not going to pull out these other rubber pieces, since with this, you can see it has 2 different sizes, to where the part that sticks out more is smaller than the closer half of it. So in order to get this fully back into this hole, you would have to have something that would pull it through, because it won't just push in. And on this particular part, you have no access to that, since everything is soldered on, like this button and this back is soldered on, so you would have to take that out and then resolder it. So I'm gonna put this back on, but you can see that these other parts that have the rubber, like this is the letter buttons, have the same layout as this, to where this is just a sensor on the motherboard, and these black pieces of plastic, when you push on the button, pushes on the sensor, which shows the controller what button is pushed. And the same with the directional pad. These are just sensors with a piece of plastic inside this rubber. The analog sticks are soldered onto the motherboard. You can kind of see inside them, so when you move it, it has a mechanism on the inside of this box that shows where the analog stick is being pushed to. These LED lights actually use a reflector, so the lights on the motherboard light up, and then these clear pieces of plastic reflect it out into here, so no actual lights are facing this way. They're all facing out, and then it reflects into these clear pieces of plastic. The triggers have these wires that go up into this, which I imagine would have the same layout as this with the sensors and then the plastic that pushes on the buttons. So now that we have this completely torn down, we can put it back together. So now that we have the bumper and triggers back on, we can put this back on the front of the controller. Just got to make sure the analogs and everything line up and go in. Just like that. And now I need to put in these 3 screws. So now that we have those screws in, we can put the back plate on. I just have to make sure that these wires are flat so that they don't get pinched, and that these coils here stay upright so that they don't get pushed down when I put the back cover on, otherwise the batteries won't work. I'll put that in here. Make sure those coils go in and that they're still up like that. Then I can just push the frame back, and now I just need to put the screws back in. Now that we have the screws in, the buttons seem to be working fine, even the ones where that rubber piece is loose. Triggers are fine, back buttons. Now we can put the batteries in and see if it can still turn on. It can still turn on. And that is how to tear down a Nintendo Switch enhanced wireless controller. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I would appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to my channel. And also you can follow me on Twitter at TestThatTech. Let me know if you have this type of controller for the Switch and what you think of it down in the comments.